The reason that if Jesus really died is so significant is because he was born to die. That's what he came here to do. And if he didn't die, then there would be no resurrection. And if there's no resurrection, then the Christian faith is useless. Some say that the death of Jesus was a setup, and the reason there are eyewitnesses of his resurrection is because he never really died on the cross. You could say, oh, but even Muslims say that Jesus lived but didn't die. But with all due respect, the Quran was written 6 centuries after Christ, and I would prefer to have historical sources closer to the timeline and really look at the details of the Romans then and how they would specialize in killing. In my last video, I talk about a Roman historian called Tacitus and a Jewish historian called Josephus, and how in their writings they talk about Christ being crucified. Other early non-sympathetic writers who talk about the execution of Jesus include the Greek writer Lucian of Samosata and Marab bar Serapion. Lucian in one of his writings says this: "The Christians, you know, worship a man to this day, the distinguished personage who introduced their novel rites and was crucified on that account." The critic John Dominic Crossan writes that Jesus' death by crucifixion under Pilate is as sure as anything historical can ever be. Atheist scholar Gerd Ludemann also says, Jesus' death as a consequence of crucifixion is indisputable. Adding to all of that, if Jesus didn't die, then the soldiers, the watching women, Joseph, and Nicodemus didn't realize that Jesus was actually not dead. Also, if Jesus didn't die, then after neatly folding up his grave clothes, he managed to push the stone away, escape the tomb, avoid the guards, and in spite of all the wounds and the nail wounds through both of his heels, he just managed to walk away. Roman writer Quintilian said this about crucifixion: "Whenever we crucify the guilty, the most crowded roads are chosen, where most people can see and be moved by fear." So remember, Jesus' death wasn't hidden or secretive. It was supposed to be humiliating and was supposed to make a statement and have an effect on people. And just so everyone knew that that person on the cross was Jesus, Pilate made a sign that hanged above his head saying, "The King of the Jews," and it was written in Aramaic, Greek, and Latin, so everyone knew who he was. This is how the crucifixion process would pan out. Before the act of the crucifixion, the Romans would scourge the person. It was done to weaken the body and make it unbearable for what was about to come. The whip was made out of a strip of leather attached to a handle with broken glass, nails, bones, and lead weights which were attached to the end of the strips. The whip was designed to rip through the flesh, tearing muscle and skin from the bone. Jesus was flogged 39 times. This is without the beatings, the times he was spat on, the crown of thorns being pushed into his skull, and after taking all of that, having to carry his own cross on his back under the Israeli sun. Then, after the person took their cross to the chosen place of the Romans, the person would have their arms fixed by ropes or have large nails be hammered through their wrists to a crossbeam that was then raised and slotted into a vertical post. They wouldn't really hammer the nails through the palm of the hands because the soft tissue here isn't strong enough to hold up the weight of a person without ripping. The feet were then nailed and then the person was left simply to die. Now imagine, with the weight of a grown person being supported by only the legs, every breath they took forced them to push down on their nailed feet and up. And remember, the wood on their backs wasn't nicely sanded down or smooth. So with any movement they would make on their open flesh from the flogging, they would get cuts, splinters, scratches, everything you can think of. A crucified person could be left for days like this, suffering exhaustion, dehydration, sunstroke, and becoming food for birds and animals. Now, because the Jewish leaders didn't want the men hanging up there on the Sabbath, they asked Pilate that the deaths would be done with quickly. But seeing that Jesus was already dead, and just to make sure that he was, they stabbed his side with a spear. And when they did that, blood and water flowed out, which we now know is a description of pericardial effusion, which is a result of death by asphyxiation. But that for the soldiers was clear evidence to know that Jesus was dead. So to finish, let's get some other quick questions about his death out of the way. Did Jesus know he was going to die? Yes. Did he know he was going to die in the brutal way of being crucified? Yes. Did Jesus want to die? In the end, yes, because he did it for love. Did he know that it was going to be painful and he was going to suffer mental, physical, and spiritual agony? Yes. And did he want to go through the pain? I don't think so. I don't think anyone does. But he was willing to go through all of that because of you. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he says these famous lines: "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." Did he have the power to stop everything, all the pain, all the suffering there and then and be over with? Yes. But the times where he might have been tempted to stop it all, he knew that being obedient to what he came here to do was the most important thing. Philippians chapter 2 verse 8 says, "He humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even death of a cross." In the end, the question isn't, did Jesus live and die? The most interesting question is, did he die and live? Did Jesus want to die? Well, in the end,
you will not relent, my God. Right beside me, you have always been.
oh my God.
When in pride I've pushed away, it's your mercy that has pulled me in. You won't walk away,
Why am I
won't
always
give
crying?
me up. I know your grace has
Why are you crying?
forgiven much.
Why are you crying?
Call me yours.
Why are you crying?
Can it be in or again?
Because Jesus wanted to die.
He wanted. Well, he had to, didn't
Yeah, but he wanted to.
he? Yeah.
That's why I'm crying. But it's like he wanted to die, not because he was depressed or he didn't love life. No, he wanted to die because he loved us so much
Yeah.
that he was willing to die.
Yeah.
Walk away, won't give me up. I know your grace has forgiven much. You call me yours.
Can you get me a tissue?
Oh no, Sarah, please.
How am I gonna film the end?
Go get a tissue. I mean, you're doing things.
How am I gonna film the end? I've just cried for no reason.
No, you've cried for a reason.